Welcome to BizJetTV, and today we have a special episode where we're meeting with Tim Solms, who is a businessman and also the owner of his own private jet, and he's going to tell his story of how he went from being in the army to then flying helicopters in the army, spending 19 years in the US Army, and then moving into the business world and moving his way up to be able to buy himself his own private jet, which he flies himself. So we're going to be talking about that in this episode, finding out what things that Tim has learned along the way. And if you are looking to buy your own jet and you don't quite know how or how to make the money, at the end he gives some great advice on how you can go out there and deliver value enough to be able to afford not only to buy your own private jet but also to operate it. Now, before we get into the interview with Tim, get yourself a copy of The Quantum Economy, my latest book, which is just out. It's about business trends, business of the future, and of course how private jet is playing and will be playing a very important role in the life of the entrepreneur. So you need to get yourself a copy if you're an entrepreneur. If you've already got a copy, please post a review. And if you need a copy, just click on the link below, which will take you straight to where you can buy yourself a hard copy of The Quantum Economy, which is available worldwide, by the way. Now, let's get into today's interview with Tim Solms. Let's see what he has to say and find out about his success story, which is always inspiring for all of us. So off we go. Welcome, Tim, to the show. Thank you for your time. You've got a great story to tell. And let's start with you joining the Army as a helicopter pilot. What motivated you to make that decision at such a young age?
Well, joining the Army and becoming a helicopter pilot are 2 points in time that are very far apart. I grew up in a military family. I'd been around it my entire life, and I showed some interest in that, was looking at attending the military academy and wound up going to the Citadel. But as I was headed down that path, my father wisely said to me, "Hey, if you're serious about a career of service, you need to know that you've only seen one side of it." He was a colonel at the time. And I spent some time with his senior enlisted advisor, his sergeant major. And I wound up enlisting in the Army at 17 and and spent time as an enlisted soldier and then stayed in the reserves through my college university years. So that parlayed into being commissioned as a lieutenant in the field artillery. Was all in, was a gunner, as you Brits say. And as I was on a deployment and out of the blue got a call from the chief of Army Aviation while I was in a tactical environment and said, "Hey, I'm sitting here looking at your file and I'd like to know if you'd be interested in taking a look at Army Aviation." I had an older brother who was one of the first Apache pilots, and I'm standing there in a tent looking at my commanding officer, and everyone can hear the conversation because it's over a radio. And I said, "Sir, may I call you back later?" So I wound up going to flight school. And
How old were you when you went to flight school?
Oh gosh, I went to flight school at I was 25, 26 years old when I went to flight school. So I was a brand new captain. I always joke and say I'd been a captain for about an hour and a half, and but had a lot of Army experience at that point, which helped because I brought a lot of what I would call Army troop leading experience into the cockpit and into the unit. That gets very interesting. I talk about the organization I was fortunate enough to command, Blue Max, and we'll come back to that later. But when I was the commander, I was commander of the unit. I was also the least experienced Apache pilot in the organization. So that made for a unique learning and leading experience for me.
Oh, wow. Interesting. So what was the most challenging situation you got into while you were deployed flying Apache helicopters, and how did you win over that situation? Challenge?
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting question. My most challenging situation this one won't be what you expect. It actually wasn't in the Apache. It was deployed during the fight in the Balkans. It was in the war in Kosovo. I was there in a NATO billet. And the reason it was the most challenging was because I was not in a U.S. environment. I was in a multinational environment. And what I had to learn and unlearn very quickly were national agendas and national styles to say, "Hey, I'm sitting here in a blown out building on a very muddy hilltop in Pristina, Kosovo, with 36 other nations, and we have to figure out how we're going to do this together and not make it about what my country wants or your country wants." So I learned a lot about working in the international environment and really finding the best in people, and looking past some of the obstacles that we may see from our cultural upbringing and background. And it was probably the biggest learning experience I had as a soldier.
So you're saying that the main thing there was you needed to listen and you needed to understand
I
the
learned
other
a
people.
lot about people, and I learned a lot about culture, and that's really what's carried me through from the military into business. Yeah.
Okay, so and making that kind of transition, what are the three main things you learned in the military that you have taken with you into your business life?
Yeah, number one is the importance of culture and mission focus, right? And those are so closely aligned.
Hmm.
The second thing is what to look for in great people, and those
Hmm.
and I my list of what to look for in great people are really smart, very creative, and with the ability to turn ideas into action quickly. And then the
Hmm.
last thing is keep fighting, don't give up, right? Even when hey, we were informed that we lost this bid proposal. Well, that doesn't mean it's over. It means you have to find a more creative way to go at it. And
Yeah.
I'd say those are the three things that I took away the most. And as I'm sitting there reflecting, I try not to tell a lot. In the business environment, I try not to tell a lot of there I was stories or use my hands or shooting at my watch. But those are the ideas that play in the back of my head. And the umbrella over all of that is the gratitude of being allowed to lead an organization and knowing that it's temporary. The history is with organizations, not with people. So I get
Yeah.
a moment in time where I'm allowed to lead an organization or a group of people and try to leave positive footprints and fingerprints and not do damage.
Good, good. Now, tell us about how you transitioned out of the military into the business life. Now, here in England, for example, actually a friend of mine's got a charity where he helps people leave the forces and come into civilian life, which I understand, not being a military person myself, that this transition can be difficult for some people.
It can be very
Um,
difficult. The
yeah,
things that make you successful in the military are not the things that make you successful in business. Now, the
yeah,
concepts are, but
yeah.
attention to detail, finding the best in people, taking care of people, right? Those are all part and parcel of what makes you successful.
So,
The
so
transition.
Tim, how did you make that? So you left the military what, after 19 years? You were in there, right?
Yeah, and anyone who's in the U.S. military is like, you left that close to 20 years, and the answer was yes, I did. I was just back from a deployment. I
Yeah.
was getting ready to head off to school. I had spent some time in the Pentagon, which I'll be honest, I did not like being
Mhm.
in the Pentagon. I jokingly said it, my first day there, I felt like somebody sucked all the air out of my lungs. I much
Okay.
prefer the operational side of the military, but I value what the Pentagon does and why it's there.
Yeah.
And was told, yep, you're going to go to school for a year. It's a huge, huge win for you. Congratulations. This is a big deal. But then you're probably going to go back to the Pentagon. And I said, I bet I don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I had a call again out of the blue, like I do when I wound up becoming an aviator. Was the man who was running the federal business in a technology company, who said, "Hey, I was at a dinner last night and somebody was talking to me about you, and I asked for your contact information. I wanted to see if you were interested in coming to work." And I said, no, I'm not. I'm just
Yeah.
back from a deployment. I'm in the car driving to my next duty station with my family. And he says, I'm going to let you think about it. And called me back 3 days later and said, hey, I'd just like to fly you out for a day just so we can have a chance to talk. And I wound up taking him up on that offer. I met absolutely amazing people. It was not at all what I expected. Again, I grew up in the military. That
Yeah.
I had lived inside that microcosm from day one. And,
Yeah.
at the end of that, I'm like, where do I sign up? Right?
Yeah.
That company, fortunately, their strategy back then was just hire, people that had attributes that they were looking for, throw them in the deep
So
end of the
so
pool.
why why did the technology company want you from the military? Is there something in the military you did with technology that qualified you, or was it
I
your
was always
personality?
fascinated by technology, and it was the technology of the Apache is what really drew me to it, right?
Okay.
Obviously the mission, but I was fascinated with technology. But no, it was an intersection in time, and
Yeah.
I look at, it's not stalking when it's research, Fabrizio.
Yeah.
So when I looked at
Yeah.
you and looked through your background, again, you see an opportunity, and is this an opportunity that I take and run with, or do I go a different direction? And all of my background was, this is an opportunity to jump on and run hard. And
Yeah.
just like I did as a young aviator and as a young soldier, it was, I don't have the background here, but I know if I can watch and see and be very attentive, play my part in the culture, put my head down and deliver results, I can learn a lot and then see what happens next. And so that
Yeah.
was the beginning of my sort of career in technology.
Okay. So you got into technology and then developed into a bit of an expert in fintech, cybersecurity technology. And how did you develop this skill set and become a true linchpin, let's call it?
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
so tell us that. So you come out of the military, you join this
yeah.
technology company, and then you kind of develop into this consultant entrepreneur and that. So tell us a bit about that journey.
It was, again, I think it goes back to those things that I talked to you about inside the military. It was
Yeah.
how to find great culture, right? How to keep people focused on a North Star. What is our mission? What are we trying to accomplish? Don't give me 15 things I'm trying to track. Give me 3 with an
Yeah.
ultimate goal. And in that, I worked for a very large software company, and it turned out to be a turnaround situation. I did not know that going in. And
Okay.
when I got in there, within 72 hours, I said, this requires a turnaround. I've since learned to say, hey, requires a re-optimization for growth. Like, let's look at the resources. Let's figure out what we're doing here. Let's get people organized so that we're all about growth. Some of that is changing. What are the metrics we're going to use? And so I developed skills in re-optimizing organizations for growth. And that has been my sort of playbook since that time, whether it's working with a private equity firm or being asked to do consulting, we all have our side hustles, right?
Yeah.
It is always where somebody says, we have a gem here, but it just needs to be re-optimized. We need to point it towards growth. We need to polish it. We need to get it performing and delivering to its potential. So
Yeah. So
that
you
has
kind of
been
fell
my,
into this. So you fell into this situation with a software company. You figured I can make things better. And as you
right.
made things better, you actually turned the company around and said, oh, I've actually got a knack for this.
Well, I won't say I turned the company around. My little piece of that company, right? So again,
Yeah.
I try to be very grateful, but again, I also look for opportunity. The other piece of that is to say, okay, I've now learned what I can learn here. I've done what I can do here. It's time for me to go find another opportunity, because if my skill set really is in that sort of, let's re-optimize for growth. Let's take an undervalued asset and get it up to delivering to its level of value and potential, and then beyond, and grow. You say, okay, let's do some mergers and acquisitions and develop some skill there, looking for smart people that are very creative, that are good at ideas into action. And
Yeah.
then from there, looking for that next opportunity.
Good, good. So tell us about your experience turning companies and projects around. Tell us about a few other situations where you went in and turned around and how you did it, because this is our audience likes these kind of stories. And then we'll get on to
Yeah.
the jet bit.
Well, so first of all, it's very humbling for me when you say that, because I don't feel like I'm that person. I get to come in and be a fresh set of eyes to say, hey, I think I see something here. And, I will tell you the earlier version of me made a lot of mistakes, and made a lot of mistakes that, where it had direct impact on people. And I learned very, very quickly that, hey, what needs to happen here is we need to bring focus. We need to bring deliberate action. We need to measure. A great person with whom I was chairman of a board of a company I was in said, if you can measure it, you can improve it. Right.
Yeah.
So how can we measure? What are the things? What are those key things we need to measure? And I never walk in and say, what are those key performance indicators? I say, I let that team come up with what those KPIs are.
Yeah. Yeah.
You all tell me, what are the most important things we do here? And if we did something a little bit differently, how much more growth can we get? Um, I had a commander in the military. He went on to be a 2-star general, wound up commanding field artillery, and one of the things that he used to say was, it takes just an incremental bit of additional effort to go from good to great. Now, delivering results can be different, but to get an organization from good to great doesn't take that much more effort.
True.
Keeping it there is a different story. So watching out for fatigue and staying close to people and making sure that they can sustain what it is that we are co-developing and co-putting in place is a key part of that. But that's been, I'd say, that linchpin, that turning point to say how we can get companies in there to improve. And it's not for everybody. It's not always a great fit. I've learned to listen a lot more. I've learned to be available a lot more. I will not go into an office and work in an office behind a door. I will not do that.
Yeah.
If I'm going to take the time to commute and being in Washington D.C., I'm always surrounded by lawyers and politicians. So if I'm gonna run that gauntlet to get to an office, I'm going to sit in a common area where if somebody wants to come and sit down and chat, I'll make myself available for that, right? Because I'm literally there to be with that group of people.
Yeah. So tell us about, so when you left the military, did you continue flying right away, or did you have a period where you weren't flying, and then what got you back into flying?
Well, no, I did, and it's funny. I've always loved flying. I've always been fascinated with it. From as a child, I never thought it would be something I could do. I always thought that's what smart people did. That's what successful people did. I never saw it as something I'd be able to do. Flying in the military was was an absolute gift. The people and the equipment that we got to use was just it's that pivotal point in your life where you're flying the best of what's available in the world with the best people in the world. Uh, and so I got my commercial helicopter instrument license as a byproduct of going to Army flight school down in Alabama.
Okay.
Just an extra Saturday at a barbecue place, and at the day we got our wings, half of us who had taken a weekend to do that also got handed an FAA certificate. I'm like, I have this FAA certificate. So at a duty station I had later on, it was, I could go with X number of hours of instruction and a few hours of solo. I can add my fixed wing rating onto this. So I did, and
Okay.
loved it. Just loved being able to fly for myself and not in a professional environment, and continued to do that. Had a small Grumman Cheetah when I was still in the Army, and an AA-5A.
Yeah.
From that, shortly after I got out of the Army, and family was getting larger, I moved to a Cherokee 6, right?
Okay.
And flew that like crazy, and that's what I used to get from place to place. And I immediately started using it for business.
Okay.
And then I moved up from there to a Piper Malibu, and then from there to a Honda Jet.
So basically, your business endeavors allowed you to be able to afford to start moving up and eventually get into a Honda Jet.
Well, I'd say yes, they allowed it, but they had also created the demand for that. I can tell you right now, I'm flying a Honda Jet right now,
Mm-hmm.
but if I was working, if I had something that was, a 40-minute flight away, and I thought I was going to be doing that twice a week, the Honda Jet would not be the right aircraft for that mission set, right? I look for something else. But as it is right now, I saw a pivot point during COVID where, as everything slowed down, I said, this is an opportunity for me to speed up. And so I went from spending a lot of time on the commercial airlines to I was flying my plane probably 100 to 120 hours a year. I immediately went to 260 to 280 to 280 hours a year. And that's when I moved to the Piper Malibu. Great platform, pressurization, flying in the flight levels complex, and learned that. But I realized very quickly that I was flying that aircraft right to the edge of the performance envelope almost every time.
Yeah.
And my business requirements were going to keep me on that trajectory. And
so how long did you have the Piper Malibu for then?
I had it for 2 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, flew it for 2 years, and as I was looking for the next platform, I thought, perhaps TBM would be the right next platform. And when I started looking at acquisition costs and I started looking at capabilities, absolutely fantastic aircraft
Yeah.
that the French produce.
Yeah.
Um, Another gentleman with whom I was in business previously said, "Hey, he flies a Citation Mustang." He said,
Yeah.
you should take a look."
Okay.
And he educated me quite a bit. I hopped on YouTube and started doing quite a bit of research, and made the decision at that point to look closely at the Honda Jet and start pulling data and to see if it would be compelling and it would align to the needs of my business.
So did you buy the Honda Jet new or did you buy it pre-owned?
I bought it pre-owned.
Okay.
I bought it pre-owned from the factory.
Okay.
That seemed to be the best bet.
Okay.
During that process, I got a little insight that the Elite 2 would be coming out.
Yeah.
And I had taken a position there. As
Yeah.
I saw some changes in the economy, I actually withdrew that position because I thought holding on to cash would be a better move for
Okay.
a few years.
Yeah.
But I was able to negotiate very handsomely with the factory as I bought that aircraft. And with so few units out there, so few tail numbers out there right now, working with HondaJet it's very bespoke.
Yeah.
So they individually, we want to make this the best experience for you that we can. So they did some upgrades to the aircraft. They wanted to make sure that I had an easy spot that was available for my type rating.
Yeah.
And I've continued to stay in touch with them probably on a weekly basis.
Okay, that's good. So how long have you had the airplane now? About a year, is it?
Just a little over a year. I'd probably call it 15, 16 months.
Yeah. So how have you been using the Honda Jet then for your business? Obviously, the range covered where you need to go. So you're mainly going around up and down the East Coast, is it?
Yeah, I'd say from the north. When I look in the sort of the Ohio Valley region, I'd say from probably the tip of Michigan through Texas and up and down the East Coast. Quite a bit up and down the East Coast, as a matter of fact. The interesting piece there, though, is it's a very different kind of flying. So I started flying the Honda Jet the way I would fly a Cherokee 6 or the Malibu, and quickly realized, oh no, that monetarily does not make sense. I'm not going to go hop in and pick up a daughter and fly her somewhere else, and because you're counting cycles and you're counting hours, and so I've learned quickly to focus it to the mission side of the business. And what does the business demand? And I'd say I'm 80% of my hours are business hours, and about 20% are for personal and family.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess if the range increases for your business, then you're going to have to get a bigger plane.
Yeah, I don't know. I really love the platform. HondaJet has given us a little bit of a teaser on something larger that would certainly make getting across the Atlantic Ocean feasible, and I'll keep a very close eye on that.
Yeah, makes sense.
I found the platform very compelling. So I talked about flying the Apache. I flew an A model Apache. If you talk to any A model Apache pilots, the cockpit. When I was going through the Army's version of that type rating, the qualification course, the first thing they said is, this aircraft is incredibly easy to fly, but you are the integrator of incredible amounts of disparate information. It was not a what you would consult. It was not a clean cockpit. There was different aviation systems, flight systems, weapon systems, communication systems, nav systems, forward-looking infrared, and you had to synthesize all that information. So a 2-hour flight would absolutely wear you out. Yeah. Whereas I'll do a 4.5 hour flight right now in the Honda Jet, and I will feel refreshed. I will feel rested when I finish that flight, as opposed to the aircraft that I had before, where 4 or 5 hour flight, you needed a nap. That's not the way it is at all with this platform. So the way
that is really an important point, because, for example, there's always a debate: what's better, Boeing or Airbus? And I'm a big Boeing pilot. I've never flown Airbus, but friends of mine that flown both, they said, well, you do a 10-hour duty on a Boeing compared to an Airbus, where you fly maybe 4 sectors a day. On the Airbus, you'll get home a lot more rested because the workload is less, because there's more information. You press a button and it'll do 3 things for you, while in a Boeing, you've got to press 3 buttons.
Exactly.
And so technology is really, really important. So when you are thinking of buying an airplane, especially if you're going to fly it yourself, but even if you've got two pilots up front that are going to be flying you,
Mhm.
the technology can make a big difference in, relieving the pilots from potential fatigue,
Well,
which is a big killer and has been a killer for a number of years in a lot of accidents. And it boils down to, okay, it was the human factor. Okay, well, within the human factor, what was the determining factor that caused the accident? Well, the pilot was fatigued. And fatigue is not only, the plane, it's, where they're well rested, how many hours have they flown the day before or the week before. There's a whole number of things that play into it. But if
absolutely.
you are operating an aircraft which is easy to fly, and has a certain level of automation, which, increases your situational awareness, takes stress away, gives you more energy mentally to cope with situations. I think that's really, really an important factor. So, and these new aeroplanes with all the technology like the Garmin 3000 that you have
Yep.
up front in the Honda Jet, which is also used in the Phenom 100 and 300s, and also in the CJ series built by Cessna. Certainly, what I'm hearing, having never flown Garmin avionics before myself, but what I'm hearing is a lot of people say they're absolutely fantastic.
Well, it is. And the interesting thing about the Garmin 3000 that you mentioned, so I fly the Honda Jet version of the Garmin 3000, whereas the 3000 in the other air platforms are a little bit different. It is
Yeah,
tied into every system on the aircraft, so it's all centrally managed. When I was flying that Piper Malibu, I was flying the Mirage, the piston engine version of that.
yeah,
It I had it had been previously retrofitted for a Garmin glass cockpit, and having that experience is really what pushed me to say I'm looking for a similar experience. And so when I was looking at light jets, and I was looking at the Premier 1A, I was looking at the Mustang, and it was my familiarity and experience with Garmin that made the Honda Jet very compelling for me.
yeah. Well, it makes sense because you sort
Yeah,
of build on the experience you already got. You don't have to relearn something,
yeah.
which I think is really, really important.
And when I went through the type rating, my sim partner was a former uh, uh, space shuttle pilot
Oh,
and older gentleman. And it was interesting to me how, as smart as he was, that he struggled a little bit with the automation of the aircraft.
was he
Uh,
buying the plane himself, or was he doing the rating for somebody else?
no, he was going through and getting fractional. He went into he bought a position with a fractional.
So he could do some flying as well. Yeah,
So he could
okay.
do some flying and phenomenal. I mean, phenomenal experience. But we were able to, and we still stay in touch. And one of the things that he says, he watches some of my YouTube videos, which I appreciate. But he uses Microsoft Flight Simulator quite a bit to help keep those systems fresh because he's not flying as much as he used to be,
Yeah,
which I
yeah,
thought was very interesting. Yeah,
yeah. And I think Microsoft Flight Simulator's come a long way over the last few years.
absolutely, it has. It is probably 50% of the questions that I get on YouTube are from people that are using the HondaJet in Flight Simulator.
Yeah, and I'm surprised that flight schools these days aren't using simulators more than than they could be.
Well, they're certainly
Um,
using them more than when I went and learned to fly.
no, I mean today you can basically. I mean, if I was to set up my own flight school, I would teach in one of these modern simulators with the visuals. I'd teach my students all the maneuvers in that, and then we'll go in the airplane. When they've mastered the maneuver in the simulator, we go in the airplane and actually do it.
Well,
Um,
the type rating in the HondaJet is you have never been in the aircraft when you get type rated.
well, same
I
here. When
use
I flew the 737, I jumped in an airplane in Manchester Airport and flew all the way to Canary Islands.
yeah.
I mean, I'd done some landings because here in England you have to do 6 takeoffs and landings when you do a heavy jet. So I did those, but then the actual real flight I did was a 4.5 hour flight to the Canary Islands and then landed. And that was a real landing with passengers on board. So
Well,
it certainly can do
the
work.
second part of that is the mentor pilot piece, and that's usually a insurance driven requirement. For me, I was given 35 hours of mentor pilot time. I chose
Mhm.
to do my mentor pilot time before I went to my type rating. I wanted to be very familiar with the aircraft and the systems before I got there. That turned out to have been a very good path for me
You
personally.
did this in your own airplane. So you took delivery of the airplane without having the rating,
That's
brought in
correct.
the mentor pilot because
Yep.
you flew by a single pilot, and then you flew with him before you went. That's a good idea, actually.
Well, and I would use two different mentor pilots, and this was by design. One former Navy F-18 pilot, rated in the jet, very operational focus on how he instructed. The other person with whom I used rated in the aircraft an instructor, but also rated as an A&P in the Honda Jet. And he
Okay.
took a very systems related approach. And so working with both of them, and I split my hours between those two mentors, really gave me some different benefits. And those are the people with whom I'm working now, as we're helping the Honda Jet Owners and Pilots Association focus on how do we get better, safer, how do we engage better with the insurance agencies, et cetera. And those two are a big part of helping with that.
Yeah, because that's the other thing, that you are also chairman, correct, of the Honda Pilots?
No, I'm not. I'm just a member of that board, which is
Yeah.
nice. I would not want to be the president of that board right now.
Mhm.
It's a very busy time, but I'm grateful to be able to participate, and I was glad to be asked.
Yeah, that's interesting. And what they do is basically just coordinate things and make things easier for Honda Jet pilot owners, correct?
Right, and also to bring visibility to issues, whether it be maintenance issues, safety issues, to participate in that community and get that community conversation going, and then also give back, bringing a singular voice back to the factory. The beauty of having a jet clean sheet designed by somebody who's historically an automobile manufacturer. Was a lot of thought and intentionality that went into that, and then we all want somebody designed like that, but then we want to work with a company that maybe is a little bit more focused on aviation. So the fact of the matter is we have a very good experience, and Honda Aircraft Company is very good about listening to the users. And
I think that's important. And I think two things that they've done, which have been very clever. First of all, they took 10 years to get this airplane certified because they wanted to get it right. And the second thing is the factory is in the US, where
yes,
there's a lot of, people with experience in building airplanes.
yep,
And of course, there's a massive market for it because, most
there is,
people buying a Honda Jet are people like yourself. They're entrepreneurs that fly.
right,
And the biggest market for entrepreneurs that fly is the US market. I mean, I remember talking to another manufacturer, and I won't name who, about having a factory in the US. It was Scott and I were planning on doing this, and they just said no. I said, "Do you
yeah.
realize how many more aircraft you'll sell if you do this?" Nope, not interested. But
Well,
Honda
and
done the right thing.
in that market demand, I think you're right, is very compelling. And I give a lot of credit to Honda Aircraft Company for making that decision
Yeah,
and for, continuing down that path. So when we talked a lot about culture, right?
yeah,
So the best of that, that automobile manufacturing culture now combining with the best of the aviation culture.
yeah. That's really, and of course, and Honda Aircraft Company is an independent company, part of the Honda
Yeah.
family.
I mean, look what they did with engines, where they said, "Hey, a lot of fantastic engines out there, but we're looking for something a little different." So they built a separate company in cooperation with GE. So GE, Honda, Aero, and
Yeah,
developed a brand new engine.
yeah.
And that engine so far has been absolutely bulletproof. It's been fantastic, very efficient, and the power out of those has been fantastic.
Yeah, and of course the design with the engines mounted on top of the wing is very unusual. It's originally a German design that Honda took inspiration from,
Yep, it
and
is.
from an aerodynamics and also from a noise perspective. I
Yeah,
mean, number of Honda Jet owners have said to me, "I can hear what people are saying in the cabin from the
I can.
cockpit. It's that
Yeah.
good."
My wife and daughter say it's very comfortable back there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there you go.
I don't know.
And it's got a proper toilet as well, even though it's a small aeroplane.
It does.
Flush toilet, which is handy, and that baggage compartment at the back.
Yes,
Um,
exceptional.
yeah. As I always say, it's got the Harry Potter effect where it looks really small from outside, but when you get in it, you can comfortably sit in there, six people, and have your baggage compartment full of bags and golf clubs and whatever else you want to
There
carry.
you go. Yeah. Great
It's
utility aircraft and exceptionally well designed. It's been an absolute pleasure to fly. But yeah, I want to make sure, I one of the reasons that I started filming my flights, one, my father is
yeah,
absolutely fascinated by it, and
uh-huh.
he's at an age and stage now where getting in and out of the cockpit isn't quite as easy. And I just wanted to share those flights with him. I had no idea that people were going to watch it and start
Yeah.
asking, a lot of questions, but that's been fun for me.
Yeah.
But it also gives me an opportunity to watch my flights and be very critical.
Yeah.
And I find myself sometimes saying, maybe I want to edit this piece out.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm going to leave it in. Right? I'm only going to stay humble and safe if I actually leave this in. And
yeah. So those of you watching, click on the link below and it'll take you to Tim's YouTube channel. You can watch him flying the Honda Jet from A to B to C to D. And that's interesting. So when you fly, you mainly single pilot, or you take another professional pilot with you?
I fly mainly single pilot. The only time in the last year and a half, the only time I've had somebody else with me is when I've been doing mentor pilot flights. So
Yeah.
for me, getting single pilot typed was the right move, and it's worked out very well for me so far.
Yeah, I know a lot of business people now, and I've said this before in other episodes of BizJetTV. There's a lot of people now thinking, well, you know what? I've always wanted to fly. So they may be playing around with Flight Simulator at home. Then they go down to the local flight school, get their private pilot's license, work their way up and buy an airplane, even if it's a small Sirius S-22, start with that, then move on to a turboprop, twin engine, and then get your jet. But there are more and more business people now, because of the disruption in the airline industry. They're saying, if I had my own airplane, I can fly it single pilot. It sits at the local airport. I mean, it's from my home. If suddenly I need to go somewhere, I can just fire up the jet and off I go. And you control that situation. And there's more and more business people doing that today. And I can see that trend growing very nicely. The issue is always on the training, as we've spoken about off camera, which is always a bit of an issue. Now, obviously, you've had all this success in the military, in business. You've got your own airplane. You're flying it yourself. And while all this has been going on, you've had time to have a family, with kids. So tell us a bit about your family and how your family have lived your career with you, and how you managed to balance those things out.
Well, I'm great. I am grateful for that. I have I'm a fantastic wife who she is gracious enough to say, "I love your hobbies. Your hobbies take me to nice places."
Okay, so she enjoys the private jet. Yeah,
that's right. She does, and the daughters all do as well. I have one daughter, so 5 girls. Well, we are a blended family. My wife was a widow and had 2 children, and so with 5 daughters, the fourth, who is actually at university in the UK and Scotland, is the one who's always been absolutely fascinated with flying. And it was very interesting.
She's the next Honda Jet pilot, then.
I hope so. But it's funny. I'm starting to see some interest from our middle girl as well, who's like, well, wait a minute. At some point, you won't do this anymore, and I like it. And so she actually spoke up this year and said she was perhaps interested in learning to fly.
Okay. How old is she?
She's 24. And, and living in Boston, and I was able to go see her a couple weeks ago. But it's funny. The first 2 they'd be in their car seats, and I'd start to taxi, and they were both asleep. And I just thought that's what children did. They fell asleep when you taxied in a plane. And then the one daughter who's at St. Andrews, when I started flying with her, she was wide-eyed. Yeah. Never fell asleep, asking a million questions, pointing to things from the earliest age. And I said, oh, this one's different. Matter of fact, my most prolific video on YouTube is me flying with her, going down to, she was home for holidays. She hadn't been home for a year. She said, Dad, I'd love to go fly with you. Let's go down to Charleston, South Carolina, and get some lunch and just spend some time together. So we did. And that seems to have resonated with the YouTube audience better than the others. But again, on that flight, a million questions. Why this aircraft? How it was different than the other planes that we had flown. So 5 daughters, all doing very well. San Francisco, Boston, San Francisco, London, Boston, Scotland, and Michigan.
Wow. Yeah. Good. So during your career, then, how have you managed to balance time at work with home and everything? And was it more difficult in the military compared to your life now as
Well, the military has the doesn't always accommodate geography, right? So the military will take you away usually at very little notice and put you in austere environments where it's very difficult to be a part of a family unit. Technology has come a long way that's helped soften that a little bit, but nothing makes up for being present and being
of course.
available.
Yeah.
How I manage that, not always well.
Yeah.
Um, but I try to listen. I find I like to say that I'm coachable,
Yeah.
and I do split my time between two different locations, and so having grown up in a military family and had a career, I'm not from anywhere. I've moved so many times that it's I can't say that I'm from anywhere, but I do have a matter of fact. I'm doing a flight this Friday with my older brother, who was one of the early Apache pilots and probably the main reason I wound up in there. And he and I are flying up to northern Michigan, where we have summer homes. We have summer homes there because we had a great great grandfather who was a judge that thought beyond his own lifespan, and created something that we get to still enjoy today.
No.
So we're going to head up there together, and I'm going to film that one and see if I can turn around and get that published as well.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's very, very interesting. So what would be your recommendation to someone that's been watching or listening to this podcast and they want to get their own private airplane to fly it themselves? And they're thinking, well, how am I going to get the money together? How can I make the millions to be able to afford this? What would your advice be to somebody that's got this kind of idea now, and they probably landed on this episode of BizJetTV or Quantum Action podcast to sort of search for the answer to this question? What would your answer be?
Yeah, so first of all, if you are researching this stuff, it means you have that burning desire inside. If you find yourself up in the middle of the night and you're pulling on podcasts like this, like I did with yours, that means that there is that driving force in there. And when we talk about that North Star and that mission, that's what you have to seek. But it's not at all costs, right? Being very intentional. As I talk to my daughters as they enter the workforce, I tell them, look for three things. Look for the culture of the company. And it's very difficult to know from the outside. But there's a lot that you can sort of indicators out there, but you'll know almost immediately when you arrive. Look for that culture and then be a part of the culture, be a part of making it better. Number two, are you doing something, creative or disruptive? Whatever it is. I don't care if it's making donuts. I don't care if it's writing code or using analytics to interpret financial data. You're doing something creative or disruptive, and then the last thing is your ability to make an impact. So if you look for those three things, it tends to line up to be a successful endeavor, and then bring your best. Right? Bring your best. And it takes just an incremental amount of additional effort to really bring the best that you can. Listen to that feedback, because you may think you're firing on all cylinders and bringing your A game, but when you look around you, people will be willing to give you that feedback if you need to redirect. And then you look for opportunity. Is there opportunity to step up and do something different? Is there opportunity to improve what I'm doing? There are folks out there that have different paths to success. There are family opportunities. There are geographical opportunities. For me, I'm fortunate that I had a family where the culture was one of service and one of hard work, and I try to adopt that. But I find myself correcting my azimuth regularly. It's not a one and done kind of thing. And then where can I add value? So culture, creativity, and the ability to make an impact are sort of those three legs of the stool that I look for to say, is this a great opportunity to jump into, add value, deliver what you can, and then continue down that path.
Yeah. Tim, thank you very much for being on the show.
Absolutely.
And the links below to Tim's YouTube channel so you can watch him fly the Honda Jet. And if you haven't already got yourself a copy of Quantum Action, which I understand, Tim, you're reading right now.
I did.
get a copy of my latest book, and we talk about the business jet world in there, and the business of the future and the trends and that. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, remember to subscribe, give us a like and comment below. We love the conversation. And that's all from us here, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.